there and welcome to my first ever book haul. If this is the first video of mine that you're watching, my name is Anna Marie, and up until last month I had been on a book buying ban since the very end of last year. And when that book buying ban ended, I managed to acquire quite a few new books. So I'm going to haul some of them today here, and I have split the number of books I've managed to acquire. As you can see, there's still some on the shelf behind me in an attempt to make it a bit more manageable. So all the books that I'm going to go through today are on the YA spectrum and are SFF. So let's dive right into the books because I do have quite a few that I want to get through. And first up are two books that I would technically classify, I think, as more middle grade or the younger end of YA. And that is Alanna, the First Adventure, and In the Hands of the Goddess by Tamora Pierce. Now, these two books are actually not ones that I purchased myself, but ones that a lovely, lovely friend gifted to me. And I have not read this series before, although I do get the sense that it is quite popular and was quite popular in its heyday. This book, Alanna, the First Adventure, was actually on the Times 100 Best Fantasy Books of All Time list. The title was something to that extent, but the list was published last fall, and I know this first book was on there, so I'm really excited to give these a go. From my understanding, the first book introduces us to Alanna and her twin brother Tom, who, for lack of a better explanation, are feeling stifled by the traditional gender norms that have been kind of thrust upon them. Alanna has always loved adventure and wants to become a knight, while her brother Tom really wants to learn how to use magic. So Tom pretends he is a girl so that he can go off to a convent and learn magic, while Alanna changes her name to Alan and, pretending to be a boy, goes to the castle to become a page to the king and begin her path to knighthood. The first book was first published in 1983, so I am a little bit nervous that just naturally the way that gender and sex are talked about is going to feel a little bit outdated. So I'm wary to see how gender is treated in this series, and kind of all that comes with pretending to be someone who you're not. However, I am really excited to read it all the same and see what I think. Next up is Blood and Honey by Shelby Mahurin, and this is the second book in the Serpent and Dove series. Now, I read Serpent and Dove almost exactly a year ago now, and I have waited a year to pick up Blood and Honey because I am one of those type of people who needs to have their books matching on their shelves. It really bugs me when books don't match, so I waited a year for the paperback copy of Blood and Honey to come out, and now that I have it, unfortunately the finishes of the covers are slightly different. Serpent and Dove has that nice soft matte look and feel, whereas Blood and Honey you can kind of see is just that standard paperback, slightly shiny. However, that has nothing to do with the plot, and I am so excited to delve back into this fantasy world. This is a fantasy romance, and in Serpent and Dove, we are introduced to Lou and to Reed. Lou is a witch who is living in this world where magic is outlawed, and Reed is a witch hunter who has sworn himself and his fealty to the church and has sworn to kill any witches that he meets, until suddenly Lou and Reed are forced to marry. And it is a fantasy romance book, so obviously something happens there and secrets are revealed, and we have a really good enemies to lovers story. So I'm so excited to finally have Blood and Honey in my hands so I can pick this up and figure out what Lou and Reed are going to get up to next. So I'm definitely going to have to pick this one up soon and give it a read. The next book that I picked up is Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard, and I think I might just be the last person on BookTube or on Bookstagram to read this book. This is another fantasy romance from what I gather, and it has some more enemies to lovers. There is a theme throughout this whole stack that I have, and also just a theme in my reading in general, that I really love a good fantasy romance with some enemies to lovers. So in this world, it's divided by blood and the color of your blood, with the more common folk who have red blood serving the elite royalty who have silver blood. And our main protagonist is Mare, who is a commoner, and she ends up in the Silver Court, where it is discovered that she has some mysterious ability. And in an attempt to keep the fact that she has common blood and yet this mysterious ability a secret, the king forces her into a betrothal with one of his sons. And then so begins our enemies to lover tale, as Mare has to decide whether she's going to use her newfound position to help the rebellion, or if she is going to follow her heart and launch herself into uncharted territory. So I'm really excited to see what I think of this one, and I will be sure to film my reaction to this one. Similar to Blood and Honey, this next book is also the second in a series. However, this one was a duology, so this is the conclusion, and that is Crown of Thunder by Tochi Onyebuchi. The first book is Beasts Made of Night, and I read this one actually not too long ago. I had some mixed feelings about Beasts Made of Night. I thought it was very intriguing, but it was very fast-paced to the point where I wasn't really believing the characters' motivations. But Onyebuchi has created a world in which sin has a physical manifestation, which I love that premise so much. And in this world, we meet Taj, who is a Aki, or a sin eater. And he is the most powerful among the Aki in his community, and he is called upon to go and eat the sin beasts of one of the royals. And when he goes into the castle to do so, he is then embroiled in a plot to overthrow the royal family, and it disrupts everything he ever knew about his town and the royals who ran it. So I am so excited to finally have the conclusion in my hands and to see what happens to Taj next and how his story is going to conclude. Next, I picked up Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, and I'm sure you can tell that I adore Sanderson. I have read pretty much all of his Cosmere books, but I have not read a non-Cosmere book before, and that is exactly what Skyward is. I've always had it on my radar, but never took the plunge to pick it up until talking to someone who I went to school with, who I went to university with. She pitched this to me as sassy AI, and that is all she had to say, and immediately I was hooked, and immediately I knew that I needed to pick this one up. So I was so excited to finally have it, and I'm actually going to read the blurb from Goodreads for you because I really want to do Sanderson justice here. Defeated, crushed, and driven almost to extinction, the remnants of the human race are trapped on a planet that is constantly attacked by mysterious alien starfighters. Spensa, a teenage girl living among them, longs to be a pilot. When she discovers the wreckage of an ancient ship, she realizes this dream might be possible. Assuming she can repair the ship, navigate flight school, and perhaps most importantly, persuade the strange machine to help her, because this ship uniquely appears to have a soul. I mean, how great does that sound? And that soul is sassy and snarky, which is how I love my AI to be. How I love all of my characters to be fair. Another book that I've had my eye on for a while and finally picked up is Fable by Adrienne Young. And I ordered this copy online, and like so many others, I got the short end of the stick, and I got a copy that has this permanent sticker on it that's non-removable, and it bugs me, I won't lie. And look at this cover, it's so stunning to begin with. Anyways, the book, Fable. I'm really excited to have this. It is a YA fantasy book that has pirates and it has romance, which are two things that I adore. The book introduces us to Fable, who is the daughter of the most powerful trader in the Narrows, and tells us that it's been 4 years since her father abandoned her on an island and she watched her mother drown during an unforgiving storm. In order to escape the island, Fable enlists the help of a young trader named West in order to get off the island and find her father and get her rightful spot among his crew. Except West isn't all that he seems to be, and together they will have to survive more than the treacherous storms that haunt the Narrows if they are going to stay alive. So some more enemies to lovers. How many times can I say excited? Apparently none too many. The next and last book that I picked up for this video at least is The Light of All That Falls by James Islington. This is the third and final book in the Lycanus trilogy, and I am so excited to have finally picked this up. I first read the Lycanus trilogy, I read book 1 and book 2 at the very beginning of 2019. I think it was in 2019. I know it was in 2019. I think it was January of 2019. So I read the first 2 books in 2019 and then needed to wait for this book to come out in paperback because of who I am as a person and how I want all of my copies to match on my shelf. And it came out in December of 2020. I went on my book buying ban in November of 2020. So I have waited since then to finally pick up this final installment and see how this story unfolds and concludes and wraps up. This is a high epic fantasy. If you can make out on the cover here, it says that if you love The Wheel of Time, you will love this trilogy. That is very true. I adore The Wheel of Time, and particularly in the first book, The Shadow of What Was Lost, when the world building was taking place, there were multiple elements that while I was reading it, it immediately clicked, and I was just like, oh, that's a lot like that thing from Wheel of Time. Thankfully, Islington did put enough of his own spin on the world building and in the plot that it didn't bug me too much. I could just see it from the perspective of a fellow fan of Wheel of Time. In addition to Robert Jordan, you can see how Islington takes a lot of inspiration from Patrick Rothfuss and Brandon Sanderson too. So it's a little bit of the traditional fantasy trope where you have the young boy savior who was the unexpected one to take the helm and lead the crowd. But I like that. I love traditional fantasy in that sense if it's done well, and I do think this is written well. This, I believe, was a debut from Islington. The Shadow of What Was Lost, the first book, was his debut. So you get the joy of witnessing an author's journey and watching as their writing progresses. I think in the first book, the dialogue was a bit clunky and chunky, especially while that info dumping and world building was happening. But then by the next book, An Echo of Things to Come, you could see how Islington had improved. So I'm really excited to read this final installment and see if Islington has just improved even more. One thing that I will say, this is a really big epic. It's a really big storyline. And because it's only a trilogy, even if it's a very chunky trilogy, there are certain elements that don't get dove into as much as, say, I would particularly like them to. For example, the character motivations aren't delved into as much as I would like, so I struggled to understand their motivations or really believe them when they pivoted from one perspective to another or decided to do a thing. Obviously, those things aside, I'm still so excited to finally have this book in my hands and to see how the story concludes. So those are about half, maybe less than half, of all of the books I've picked up over the last 2 months, which is a lot, I am well aware. My next video is likely to be the second part of this book haul, or it might be a July books wrap up. I'm not quite sure, but stay tuned for that. As always, thank you so much for watching. Let me know down below in the comments if you have read any of these books or if they're also on your TBR, and I will be back soon. Bye for now.